Good morning. It is November 30th, coming to you live from Seoul. We start with the stories making the headlines at this hour. More hostages have been released from Gaza on the sixth day of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Mediators are pushing for another extension of the truce that's set to expire on Wednesday. The U.S. has sanctioned a cryptocurrency mixer accused of laundering money for North Korea in its latest move to cut Pyongyang's cyber activities that fund its weapons programs. The OECD predicts global economic growth to slow down next year, but it has revised up its forecast for the South Korean economy, which it predicts to expand by 2.3% on recovering exports. We start with the latest developments in Gaza. More hostages have been released on the sixth day of the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Mediators are pushing for another extension of the truce that's set to expire on Wednesday. Bae-eun-ji has the latest.
With the extended ceasefire in Gaza set to expire early Thursday, an Israeli official has reportedly said it could possibly be extended by another 2 to 3 days. Citing an unnamed Israeli official involved in the negotiating process, Reuters reported that there are still women and children being held by Hamas to cover at least 2 more days based on the rate of releases so far. This comes as negotiators including Qatar, Egypt, and the U.S. continue to work toward another potential extension of the pause in fighting.
We're hopeful that the truce can be extended, but as I said in the Council, this is all in the hands of Hamas. The Israelis have said if they continue to release 10 hostages a day, they will extend by a day. So it truly is, it is in their hands, but I do think there is a potential for that. And we're actively working to extend the deal.
The Israeli military has said a new group of 10 Israelis, 4 Thai nationals, and 2 Israeli Russians were released late Wednesday local time from the Gaza Strip. The hostages were handed over to the Red Cross by Hamas. Israel is also set to release 30 Palestinian women and children. Over the first 5 days of the truce, which began last Friday, Hamas released 81 hostages, and Israel freed 180 Palestinians from prison, mainly women and minors. Meanwhile, Hamas has claimed a 10-month-old hostage, who is believed to be the youngest captive, was killed during Israeli bombing. The militant group said he was killed along with his 4-year-old brother and their mother. Israel, which has been accusing Hamas of using civilians as human shields, said it is assessing the claim. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. has sanctioned a cryptocurrency mixer accused of laundering money for North Korea. This marks Washington's latest efforts to cut Pyongyang's cyber activities used for funding its weapons programs. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Department of Treasury on Wednesday sanctioned Sinbad.io, a virtual currency mixer used by North Korean hacking group Lazarus Group, adding them to its Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctions list. The department added that the cryptocurrency mixer processed millions of dollars worth of virtual currency that the hacking group gained from its heists. Crypto mixing services improve the anonymity of transactions and are used by criminals to make funds harder to trace. The sanctions comes as the UN panel of experts on UN Security Council sanctions against the North said that Sinbad had laundered close to $100 million in Bitcoin for the Lazarus Group. The panel also explained that through its hacking group, North Korea was able to steal some $1.7 billion in cryptocurrency last year. The fresh sanction against the cryptocurrency mixer also comes as Pyongyang launched a space rocket last week to put a military reconnaissance satellite into orbit. However, both Seoul and Washington have been stepping up efforts to stop the regime's cryptocurrency theft and other cyber crimes as they can fund their weapons programs. The Treasury Department noted that Lazarus Group has operated for more than 10 years and is believed to have stolen over $2 billion worth of digital assets across multiple thefts. Lazarus Group was previously sanctioned by Washington in 2019 as a state-sponsored cyber hacking group of the North. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The OECD predicts global economic growth to slow down next year, but it has revised up its forecast for the South Korean economy, which it predicts to expand by 2.3% on recovering exports. Our Shina Young has the details.
The OECD forecasts a slow recovery in the global economy until the first half of 2024 due to monetary tightening and weakening trade growth. Nevertheless, it expects more improvements in the second half as monetary policy gradually eases. According to its latest economic outlook report released on Wednesday, the OECD forecast growth of 2.7% next year, which is the same as its interim report in September. The world economy is expected to grow by 2.9% in 2023 before declining in 2024 and rebounding to 3% in 2025. This year's estimated growth has been revised from the previous projection of 3%. Factors supporting the world economy included a decline in global oil prices and a growing labor force. However, the OECD points out rising geopolitical tensions and the lingering effects of monetary tightening as downward factors. In particular, the Isarel-Hamas war is expected to increase economic uncertainty, although the impact on the global economy is expected to be limited. Meanwhile, despite easing inflation rates due to monetary tightening and falling energy prices, core inflation rates remain relatively high. The OECD adjusted headline inflation for the G20 countries, raising this year's outlook by 0.2 percentage points to 6.2% and by 0.1 of a percentage point to 5.8% for next year. However, unless there are additional shocks, it expects most countries to return to their inflation targets by 2025. As for South Korea, the OECD has slashed its growth forecast this year from 1.5% to 1.4%. On the other hand, the estimated figure for next year has been revised up from 2.1% to 2.3%. It explains that South Korea's exports are set to pick up with a recovery in chip demand. But it notes elevated debt servicing burdens, the percentage of monthly household income that covers housing costs and any other debts, and inflation as factors that will continue to weigh on private consumption and investments in the short term. For South Korea's inflation, it has raised the estimates for this year to 3.6% and 2.7% for next year. The OECD mentioned that due to rapid population aging, spending pressures are set to increase by 5% of the GDP by 2040, adding fiscal consolidation as a key to meet this challenge. 신하영, 아리랑 뉴스.
Today, the Bank of Korea will be making its final rate decision of the year. While South Korea continues to grapple with both high prices and sluggish economic recovery, Isarel wanted to be okay with freeze rates for the 7th consecutive time. For more on today's decision and what lies ahead, we're joined by Ho Jun-young, professor of economics at Seogang University. Professor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Well, first of all, let's talk about the overall economic situation based on which the BOK will be making its rate decision today. Well, how much of an improvement are we seeing on the inflation and economic recovery fronts?
Yeah, inflation was kind of slowed down recently until this July. So July inflation, CPI inflation was 2.3%, which is kind of very low number compared to last year's like more than 6% number. So we got a lot of improvement in inflation, but things happened afterward, after July. So the global surge in the oil price at the same time, locally, the food price in Korea started to rise. So now the inflation in October became 3.8 again compared to 2.3% in July. So kind of high inflation right now. At the same time, economic forecast, as you mentioned, this year's economic growth of Korea is expected to be 1.4%. 1% growth, 1.4% growth in Korea is kind of very unusual situation, except for kind of global economic crisis or COVID-19 pandemic situation. The Korean economy always grow more than 2%, but this year 1.4%, which is kind of warning sign in the Korean economy. So inflation is high, and at the same time, the GDP growth is kind of weak right now.
Okay, so certainly complicated situation, but it seems like the market is largely expecting the BOK to hold its key interest rate steady amid mounting household debt and the rate freezes by the U.S. Central Bank. What is your forecast?
My forecast is the same in the sense that the Bank of Korea has like both side kind of aspect. I mean both side aspects. They have to raise the interest rate. Also, they have to lower the interest rate. In the sense that like raising interest rate, the inflation is high. At the same time, the household debt, compared to GDP ratio, is like keep rising right now. So this is the reason why the Bank of Korea need to raise the interest rate. But at the same time, as I mentioned, this year's Korean economy in terms of GDP growth is pretty weak. So in this case, usually the Bank of Korea, the central bank, lowers interest rate to boost up the economy. But there's as I mentioned, there's tons of reasons to raise the interest rate. At the same time, there's reason to lower the interest rate. So my sense is that the Bank of Korea will maintain the same interest rate for this step.
Okay, well, this is going to be the last rate decision of the year by the BOK, which brings much attention to what BOK Governor Lee Chang-yong has to say in terms of the central bank's future steps. Are we expecting him to maintain a cautious mode for the time being?
Yeah, in these days, there is a good news about the Bank of Korea. They care a lot of attention. They pay a lot of attention to the exchange rate, especially the $1 exchange rate as well. But in these days, the $1 exchange rate in Korea kind of lowered compared to the a month ago or 2 months ago, which makes the Bank of Korea decision slightly easier to make. So I think in this regard, the president, the governor of the Bank of Korea feel comfortable about their current situation. But as I mentioned, there are tons of warning signs about the monetary policy decision making, like inflation high, GDP low, government debt is still growing. So at the same time, people in the financial market, they expect that the U.S. policy interest rate hike, the pace is over. So next year they expect that the U.S. interest rate will start to be lowered. So in this regard, the Bank of Korea's decision might be slightly easier, but in the sense that, until the Federal Reserve show a clear sign of their pivot, then the Bank of Korea will not be able to move easily, because they need to be careful about the international financial market, $1 exchange rate as well. So maybe they'll be moving after following the Fed decision, I think.
Okay, now let's be more specific about what lies ahead in the future. Some are expecting a rate cut to finally come in the third quarter of next year. What is your forecast?
So as I mentioned, the Bank of Korea decision cannot be independent of the U.S. Federal Reserve decision. So in the market, people expect that the Federal Reserve will start the rate cut from as early as possible, maybe next March, or the latest next September. So maybe my hunch is that maybe next second quarter or third quarter. So maybe the Bank of Korea will move after the Fed will move. So I think that's going to be the next third quarter of next year, I think.
And lastly, also today, the BOK will announce its revised economic outlook for this year and next year. Will we see an upward or downward revision?
Okay, so the latest forecasts this year about the GDP growth of Bank of Korea is 1.4%. So I think they will maintain the same forecast for this year, and they will revise slightly upward next year forecast, because as the news mentioned, the semiconductor industry now, they are starting to bounce up. So maybe, the Korean economy depends heavily on the semiconductor, especially export. So, they will revise next year's GDP forecast slightly higher, but this year maintain the same rate. That's my prediction.
Okay, Professor, we will have to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
A magnitude 4.0 earthquake has shaken the southeastern city of Gyeongju in Gyeongsangbuk-do province. There were no reports of any major damage. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, the earthquake struck 19 kilometers southeast of Gyeongju at 4:55 a.m. Thursday at a depth of 12 kilometers. The magnitude of the earthquake was initially reported to be 4.3 but was downgraded 5 minutes later. The KMA said South Korea experienced 99 earthquakes with a magnitude 2 or higher this year, with the latest being the second strongest of the year. South Korea saw a surge in foreign visitors last month, reaching the highest number so far this year. According to the Korea Tourism Organization on Wednesday, over 1.2 million people visited South Korea in October, marking an on-year increase of nearly 160%. This is the fourth straight month that the country has surpassed 1 million visitors. The cumulative number from January to October has exceeded 8.8 million. As such, the government expects it will easily achieve its target of 10 million tourists this year. By region, the highest number of visitors in the first 10 months of the year came from Japan, followed by China and the United States. There has been a remarkable finding of rare insect species on Korea's southern resort island of Jeju. Gyeongju tells us more about the significance of the finding.
Isarel-Hamas, untouched by human presence, is a vital wetland that preserves the natural beauty of Jeju Island. It also qualifies as an internationally important wetlands as designated by the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. Recently, 4 species of rare insects were discovered in this pristine environment. These include the endangered 두점박이 사슴벌레, or red stag beetle, and 물장군, a giant water bug, as well as rare insects such as the 남방남색 부전나비, the Japanese oak blue, and 좁쌀사마귀, the narrow-winged cricket. The stag beetle has large pincer-shaped horns and is known to inhabit only Jeju Island. This is the first time its habitat has been confirmed. The 물장군 is a giant insect measuring from 48 centimeters to a maximum of 65 centimeters. Using its large and powerful legs, it catches water insects and even snakes. Underneath the leaves of Korean firs, you can find green caterpillars. The caterpillars provide sweet secretions favored by ants in return for protection against their natural enemies, creating a symbiotic relationship. These caterpillars later transform into the rare 남방남색 부전나비, or the Japanese oak blue, and display beautiful blue wings. Another rare species, the world's smallest 좁쌀사마귀, was also found in Jeju's wetlands. These insects hide under fallen leaves, preying on flies and mosquitoes using their 2 powerful legs.
The Isarel-Hamas forms a unique ecosystem where forests and wetlands coexist unlike other forests. This environment provides a habitat for endangered species and rare insects that are seldom found elsewhere.
The research team is committed to continuous monitoring and research to ensure that the unique ecology of Isarel-Hamas, where new species continue to be discovered, remains undisturbed by climate change or human interference. Gyeongju, Arirang News.
Good morning. I'm Kim Si-young. We now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Japan, where a U.S. military aircraft carrying 6 people has crashed off the southwestern island of Yakushima, killing at least 1. The U.S. Air Force CV-22 Osprey hybrid plane was on a training mission on Wednesday afternoon when it disappeared from radar and reportedly crashed at sea. Japan's Coast Guard said 1 person was found dead, with no confirmation on the status of the others. The U.S. has not yet commented on the situation. According to local media sources, the aircraft attempted to land at Yakushima Airport with 1 engine on fire, but failed to do so. Ospreys, which can function as both a helicopter and a turboprop aircraft, have a history of fatal crashes. Now moving over to the UK, where the first human case of infection of a new strain of swine flu has been detected. confirmed by the UK Health Security Agency on Monday as virus A H1N2V, officials say that the infection was found during routine flu screening at a GP surgery in North Yorkshire. Officials have confirmed that the infected patient is now fully recovered after only suffering a mild illness, including respiratory symptoms. Experts are searching for the source of the infection, as the infected person was not known to have worked with pigs. While there has been previous outbreaks of similar swine flu, namely the H1N1 virus in 2009, there has only been 50 cases of H1N2 swine flu virus reported worldwide in the past 20 years. Now, the French capital, Paris, announced on Tuesday that its metro ticket prices will almost double for the period of the 2024 Olympics. Valérie Pécresse, the president of the Regional Council of Île-de-France, said that a single journey metro ticket will cost €4, which is roughly $4.38, for the period from July 20th to September 8th. That's almost a double of the current price of €2.10. The temporary increase in Paris metro ticket prices does not affect residents with monthly or yearly passes. Pécresse said that the prices will go up so that the Olympics are 100% accessible by public transport. Moving on to the last story of the day, the British Film and Television Academy on Wednesday announced its list of 2023 recipients of the BAFTA Breakthrough. Celebrating 10 years of BAFTA's Breakthrough, the initiative aims at identifying and supporting new generation of creatives in film, games and television in the UK, the US and India. The Academy showcased a list of 42 creatives, including UK actors Bella Ramsey and Vivian Opera, US actor Amina Nieves, and documentary director Amanda Kim, as well as Indian writer Kisley. Previous recipients include stars such as Tom Holland and Letitia Wright.
Good morning. What a freezing start to the day, and biting wind is only making things colder. It feels like minus 12 degrees Celsius in the capital this morning, and a cold wave advisory has been expanded to more parts of the country. Making matters worse, snow is expected to fall in Jeolla-do and surrounding regions. Those along the west coast will need to brace for some snowstorms into Friday. The west coast of Chungcheong-namdo province could see 1 to 5 centimeters of snowfall. In mountainous regions on Jeju Island could see more than 10 centimeters, so please stay safe out on the roads. Afternoon highs will be 3 to 5 degrees lower than yesterday. Seoul tops out at 0 degrees, but it will feel like sub-zero all day today. Daegu topping out at 4 degrees this afternoon. Sunnier skies are in the forecast except in areas in Jeolla-do province. Meanwhile, dry air continues to grip east coast regions today. The cold snap will subside this weekend. From then, we can expect much more comfortable temperatures through early next week under brighter skies. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all for today. Thanks for watching.